I'm willing to bet that you have used your phone to get a decent cup of coffee before. You type cafe, a few places show up, and you pick one. When you get there and take your spot in line, you usually don't stop to wonder, why this cafe? Why not the one across the street? You just order and move on. We like to think that our choices are fully our own. But what if something was quietly steering us? What if there was already a probability that you would pick one cafe over another even before unlocking your phone? It turns out the networks we are all part of don't just shape our choices, they can even predict them. I will get back to the coffee shop in a minute, but first let's talk about what networks actually are. At their core, networks are just connections showing relationships between people, places, and many other things. When we draw a network, those things are shown as dots, but network scientists like me call them nodes. The connections that tie them together are called links. This might seem like a simple concept. Yet, it's incredible how complex these networks can get. Just think about the train and airplane systems connecting cities and countries, trading routes delivering goods all around the globe, or the water and sewer infrastructure under our cities. We rarely think about these networks, except when they break. One delayed flight can cause a ripple of misconnections. One ship stuck in the Suez Canal can block global trade for days. And the reality is that you rely on these networks in your daily life all the time, even if you don't see them. You turn on the lights in your home thanks to an electrical network. You drive to work on a network of roadways, and you pay for your lunch by tapping into a financial network. Not to mention our digital networks. We would be truly lost without internet connection, which, in turn, links us to loads of other networks, from social media and dating apps to streaming services and ride-hailing applications. When we join these platforms, we become an active part of the network, one of the many dots or nodes in the global web of connections. As a network scientist, my job is to make these invisible networks visible. This usually means a mix of collecting data and writing computer code, and sometimes even sketching formulas on a whiteboard. By mapping these hidden connections between people or things, I can reveal which links are strong, which links are weak, who sits at the center, and who is on the fringes. And if I have done my job really well, I can not only describe the network, but I can even predict what happens next. A few years ago, I used network science to predict which characters in Game of Thrones would survive to the end. For those of you who are not familiar with the show, Game of Thrones is famous for two things: dragons and surprise deaths. Actually, the author became infamous for ruthlessly killing off even the most beloved main characters. Just when you start to like someone, a few episodes later, they are gone. This unpredictability was precisely what got me curious. Under the excuse of scientific research, I set out to map the character network of the show and use it to predict the show's ending by following a few simple steps. Step 1, data. I used scene-by-scene episode transcripts, essentially a character dialogue database. Step 2, connections. If two characters appeared in the same scene, I counted that as a link. Step 3, relationship strength. The more scenes they shared, the stronger the link. After carefully executing these steps, what I got looks like a colorful spider web where shared screen time turns into network connections. By taking a closer look, patterns begin to emerge. The main characters stand out as the largest nodes, and plot lines cluster into different segments of the graph. Some characters are deeply connected, and others bridge between storylines. When we turn these patterns into numbers and feed them into a simple machine learning model, the results are clear. The structure of the network, who connects to whom and how, predicts untimely deaths with surprising accuracy. For example, my model flagged about 8 major characters as having an almost certain death sentence, and 90% of them were dead by the end of the series. Ahead of the season finale, a former colleague actually used my findings to enter a betting pool about the character's survival. And while he didn't got me in, he still got me a pizza, so I'm pretty sure he made a decent profit on those bets. But the bottom line is, in Westeros, fate wasn't just about luck or bravery. It was about who you know. The thing is, the methods I used to predict character killings in Game of Thrones also work in real life. Not for dragons and queens, but for figuring out how successful a person or a business will be. Let's take a look at one industry as an example. I studied the world of DJs by mapping their collaborations, focusing on DJs who made it into an annual top 100 ranking over a decade. I found that the electronic music industry is split into 2 by a glass ceiling at the 20th place. All-time legends like Tiesto and Armin van Buuren reliably hold spots in the top 20 year after year, while the rest of the industry competes for a spot on the list somewhere below. It also turned out that for rising artists, connecting with big stars is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it boosts their chances of becoming successful and making it to the top 100. On the other hand, it almost certainly guarantees they will never break the glass ceiling. This means that the people you choose to connect with can shape your path or block it. Your workplace may lack a proper sound system, yet it functions a lot like the world of DJs. In 1973, a sociologist by the name of Mark Grunwetter published a famous paper called Strength of Weak Ties. It showed that it's usually distant acquaintances, not close friends, who help us land jobs. Networks can open doors. Other work on organizational networks has shown that networks inside companies often form silos or bubbles, which can become echo chambers. These workplace clusters are sometimes so removed from each other that, for example, IT and finance look like they are not even from the same firm. And such disconnected networks usually stop ideas from spreading and people from advancing in their careers. And here comes network science and visual maps like the one about Game of Thrones. Without such social maps, we can only guess where the roadblocks are or who may be the right connection to new doors. However, once we know the networks, we can gain the ability to consistently take steps forward and even drive what happens next. The methods that I've used in my projects may seem like isolated examples of using networks to predict outcomes, but actually, this type of work is happening constantly and on a massive scale, behind the curtains of every major app on your phone. Algorithms are tirelessly stitching together hidden networks of people who may never even know each other, but whose clicks and swipes and other digital breadcrumbs make them similar. In the end, The algorithms figure us out based on where we are in these networks. Netflix, for example, isn't just observing what we watch. It's learning. Every time you select a movie or rate the shows you like, helps it adjust and adapt. Moreover, it's also influenced by the choices and preferences of many other Netflix users all around the globe with tastes similar to yours. Based on what they like, Netflix predicts what you will like. Which brings me back to that coffee place you searched for. Yes, you might think that you ended up there because it was conveniently located to your next destination, or because it had a 4.5-star rating. And these things probably played a role. But your search for a coffee shop also involved what's known as collaborative filtering. This is a system that compares your behavior to others and suggests places based on what people like you have enjoyed. For example, if you and I visited the same cafes before, the system quietly assumed that we share taste, and suddenly your choices influence mine. You open Google Maps, a few places show up first, others are highlighted, and some don't show up at all. And that's not random. That's networks at work. By now, we have seen how networks, most of them invisible, shape what we do. Once we see those networks, we can start using them, and not just to predict what happens next, but to decide how we want to move forward. That's the moment we move from passenger to driver. Think of networks as maps. Every prediction is one route on the map, but the reality is that there are many others. Maps help you find the shortcuts and the roadblocks you didn't even know were there. Because every choice, every new connection adds to the map and steers your path, from the small things like your morning coffee to the big things like your career success. Choose your next connections wisely.